Really excited. Next up, we're going to be talking about Spark's leaders' journey and how LSI has helped them achieve their outcomes. Spark's one of New Zealand's leading telcos, and their journey of evolution in a pretty agile environment is really interesting. So we've got with us today Spark's HR Director, Heather Polglase, and some of you might have been able to catch Heather when she was on stage for us last year at Human Synergistics New Zealand Conference. There she shared with us around Spark's culture, transformation and journey to date. And joining her today is McCay to share the insights. Ros is with Haikai Co-Lab and has been a Human Synergistics accredited practitioner for over 15 years. So Ros and Heather have worked really closely together over the last 6 years using Human Synergistics suite of tools and diagnostics. And they've been able to build and co-create a pretty experimental and quite unique leaders program for Spark, which they're going to share the highlights of what growing adaptive leadership looks like for Spark and what's on the horizon as they continue to evolve. So a very warm welcome to Heather and Ros.
Ngā mihi Justine, moto whakataki, e akanui, e akarahi, tēnā koutou katoa. So thank you for that warm introduction, and thanks for having us to be part of this 15-minute kōrero. And I don't know if I've ever had a 15-minute conversation about something that allows you to bring your own purpose to life every day and that of the organisations that you represent. But Ros and I are going to do our best. We'll put a disclaimer that neither of us are very good at slide presentations, but both of us are quite good at conversation. And we're going to attempt to bring this conversation to you virtually from the southernmost border of the Auckland Alert 3 COVID boundary to the most northern tip of New Zealand, and see how we get on having this conversation with all of you across Asia Pacific. So Ros and I have been partnering on this particular piece of work in our journey, as Justine talked about, for the last 12 months. Some days it feels like 24 months, and some days it feels like 5 minutes. It's certainly frenetic, which I love. And we have 5 cohorts of about 70 leaders and influencers and trained from Spark, with a view that we can't currently keep up with the demand pipeline that is emerging from within the business. So that's a good problem to have. It's been an incredible experiment in of itself. And today we just wanted to share some of the high level snippets of the why, the what, the how, and what else. And we hope that any questions you have, we are either able to answer in this or certainly afterwards. So actually, where did it all start, all this adaptive leadership work? Well, it started with the why clearly in mind. And as you can see here, I'm sharing Spark's reason for being, to help all of New Zealand win big in a digital world. So if you're looking for a great big adaptive challenge or something of transformational purpose, it doesn't get much bigger than that, when, to Justine's point, we've come from a background of being a telco. And I guess we therefore bridge the gap between some of the more legacy elements of our telecommunications past to the future world of obviously more extreme digitisation and automation, and taking all of New Zealand with us along the way. So with that why clearly in mind, and it not being a small purpose, what it really spoke to for us was a sense of community. And that's, I guess, been never more evident than it has in terms of New Zealand's response to the latest disruption that a global pandemic brings, that a community or a team of 5,000 rallying together to fight this thing that was completely unprecedented. So with that in mind as a purpose, we saw that even though we had great leaders and we'd been on a long evolution since 2013 of changing both our culture and our leadership models, what we needed was not just well-developed leaders and not just an agile way of working, but we actually needed to foster a sense of a community of practice from our leaders, so that we took great leadership skills in what I call an intra capacity, so leaders leading their tribes, leaders leading their units, and we really expanded that out to be very inclusive and holistic, because in our pursuit of simplifying things for all New Zealanders to this purpose, there's a huge amount of complexity in the back end that only leaders that are able to focus across the interdependencies of their tribes, teams and units would be able to bring this purpose to life. So we then set out, I guess, on what we didn't exactly know where we were going to land with this leadership program and its design. But we did have our sights set on something that was super important to be able to I guess, unleash that purpose. And that was our flip to Agile. So as Justine said, last year there was a whistle-stop tour for me around the country with human synergistics to talk about really the flip to Agile. And we went Agile on this Agile maturity scale. We call that 0.1 on a scale of 1 to 5 in 2018. I had the fortune of taking parental leave, very well-timed parental leave. And when I came back 6 months after that 2018 flip, our own people, anecdotally at that point, because we didn't necessarily have a good maturity scale assessment, told us across 700 leaders that we were at the 0.2 on that maturity scale, which basically said, we know how to spell Agile, we understand the ways of working, we know that it works for us, we are yet to realise all the possibilities that can come from being set up in this way, but we can see all the early signs. And so to that point, I guess today I'm really very pleased with the team of 5,000's efforts to move to what is now a benchmark assessment on this Agile maturity scale of a 3. And that's been coined when we look at ourselves against other 50 global organisations as a healthy place to be in terms of enterprise-wide agility, well ahead of its time. So in true Spark essence, pace and constraint and all those things that actually define Agile have been ours to realise. And I guess with that flip and moving to 3 and that purpose, when we started to look at, well, what's possible from leadership development, we got to the point where we were very clear that we were chasing the 5. So we want to be in that top 10% globally of organisations who truly, not just from a ways of working, but from a culture, mindset, behaviour, values, to the earlier presentation, leaders that absolutely mimic and mirror all the elements that agility brings great benefits to our people every day in every way. And we realised actually that we couldn't push our way there to 5. And I think that is the start of our conversation around what's different about this. This really required us to design something for our leaders that pulled those learners who had a huge growth mindset, aptitude and appetite to come into our whare of learning. And to that end, Ros is going to talk to you about, I guess, the framework that sits behind that really pulls those leaders in and has been a core part of our design.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks Sam, for having us here today. It's a real pleasure. So the design challenge that we took on was to accelerate Spark's shift from a 3 to a 5. As Heather has said, that's essentially one about helping Spark grow its adaptive gene. That really appeals to me because I'm a scientist, so I'm all up for this. So we've taken this idea of adaptivity into our Haikai way of bringing modern academic foundations together with ancient wisdoms. And that produces a really rich, multi-layered experience for our learners. So in this case, we've discovered the wayfinding principles of the ancient navigators from 1,000 years ago, because the actual process of wayfinding embodies adaptivity to the T. So the 4 E's are our adaptive framework, and you'll recognise as we go through here the elements of the circumplex, the blue elements of the circumplex that these represent. So experimentation is actually pretty easy at Spark because they're already working in an agile way. The frame of experimentation, though, is really important to really push it to the edges because that is the frame that enables people to engage fully. I mean, we all know how energising it is to jump into something that we want to discover and learn. And we play this out at 3 levels at Spark. we encourage people to experiment with how they're reflecting and developing themselves, what they're doing to influencing their effectiveness with teams, and of course how the work gets done, iterating and improving so it becomes more effective and efficient day by day. The second element is empathy, so the humanistic, encouraging aspect in particular of the circumplex. So our thought about this is, how do we create a really truly collaborative environment where people are prepared to invest their time and of themselves in perspective taking without judgment or agenda. It's not so straightforward in a task-focused organisation is what we're learning. So what we're really challenged with is, how do we generate a robust sense of social purpose that actually extends beyond the transactional task at hand? The third element is emergence, and we're all human beings out there. And we're all challenged by this capacity to work with reality and truths as they emerge. So what we're doing on the program is finding ways to help people to manage their attention rather than being focused on managing their time. And finally, the fourth element, environment setting. Spark's going to perform at its best, or to be at its best, when its leaders are able to create the conditions for success. So these people will thrive when our leaders pay attention to the physical environment and also to the emotional environment. Heather's now going to take you through how we've sort of built this program and how it's clipped together at a high level.
Thanks, Ross. So this is a very high level design element overview. We've bookended the program, which is approximately 6 months in duration, unless you have a global pandemic in the middle, and then you might want to reboot for slightly longer, with obviously self-insight, self-awareness, and we use LSI 1 and 2 at either end of the program, although we do delay the reassessment on the way out until the 12-month point, naturally, instead of 6. The other bit that we have built into the design is the invitation gateway, and we didn't do this to start with. This has become super important because, like I said, there's always that tension between supply and demand, and in an agile world, with constraint being what breeds magic, you need to make sure that the people who we are investing in and having on the program are really all in and are there for all the right reasons and have the solid commitment. So we also introduced an invitation gateway into that program. All of the learning sessions or workshops, and we've not been very good at deciding what to call them, which is part of our experimental approach. We kind of like to speak the language of the business as opposed to the language of HR or anything that sort of polarizes. But essentially all the learning sessions that we have with the small cohorts of about 12 all bring to life the 4 E's as part of our design core, and they all speak to allowing our people to figure out clearly what is their personal purpose and how does that relate alongside the 4 E's to our organisational purpose. So giving people an opportunity early and upfront to invest their own skin in the game as opposed to just the ROI that the organisation is looking for. Taki Toru coaching is quite a novel concept. We managed to find 2 incredible external performance coaches when we kicked this off, who looked at us somewhat quizzically when we talked to them about this concept, but nonetheless have embraced it. And this is 2 people from the cohort, so peers, will then be coupled with an external professional performance coach. And the design of that is, following each learning session, these coaches and their peer will help increase, I guess, that healthy tension and accountability and bring to life each of the session's learnings and outcomes. So to Ros's point, if there are things that need to be experimented with, then these coaches help to bring that to life and add some more coaching capacity. So teaching, I guess, our leaders how to coach by seeing them play it out in front of them. We then have a series of masterclasses, and this all happens within the first 3 months. And these are really, I guess, the key levers that we pull to tap into that adaptive gene that we're trying to master or help our people master. So performance under pressure, countering imposter syndrome through authenticity, and next level leading of inclusion. And we use a range of external facilitators or leading edge visionaries, I guess, and actual people putting this into action in real life to facilitate those masterclasses. The second part of the challenge, of the program, is the last 90 days, which is an experimentation challenge. So this enables our leaders to then decide what they'll rally around, speaking to that purpose that we're after as an organisation, and figure out what they could bring to life through a proper applied community of practice. So they pick a shared purpose and see what they can actually do and deliver for the organisation and for all New Zealanders. And then finally, like I said, we bookend it on the way out with them showcasing what they've actually brought to life through their learnings and insights and an LSI reassess. So that was a whistle-stop tour. We wanted to then just, I guess, conclude our overview with talking about what we believe are our points of difference here. So the first is we really go after this concept of a village of learners. And to do that, we create the environment inside wherever we are, whatever that environment looks like for learning, where curiosity and I guess healthy discomfort are allowed to foster amongst the group, so that we are pulling in, like we said earlier, all those people who have a real desire and propensity to learn and have a step change in mind for their own leadership. But also we've learnt a lot about having some different conditions for that to be really effective. So really pushing the boundaries in terms of the environments that we go into and where we do that learning.
Yes, and thinking about collaboration, I'd like to start by saying that Heather and the team are an absolute embodiment of bringing this to life. As a part of the team, I feel really engaged and able to come to the party with half-formed views and get some guidance, but also pull things together in quite a unique and different way. So part of my role is to actually bring this team together. So looking for two things here. One is that they're an outlier. So all the people in the faculty are unique in their own ways, some for social enterprise ways, some for academic thought leadership, and so on. The other thing that knits us all together is people that have a true generosity of spirit, and that plays out in a willingness to share ideas openly and build on each other's expertise. So what's happened, or as a consequence of that, we've been able to scale our learning, which is pretty special. So we've used a method which we've borrowed from the medical profession, see one, do one, teach one. So each of the learners gets is provided with some new content or insight. They practice it, do one, and then they are provided with a pack where they can go out and teach what they've learnt to others, either in their teams or in their families. So there's a big pay it forward component to it.
This modelling of the 4 E's, I think the whole way we've managed this conversation brings that to life nicely. We, Ros and I, hold each other to account, and the rest of, I guess, our faculty of partners, for making sure that along the way we are embodying these 4 E's as we turn up inside the learning environments. And then I've really woven this through the story, but we truly believe that we're onto something quite different here, because we started with this purpose in mind. We have people's personal purpose woven throughout the program. We certainly do not pay any lip service, which I have been involved in other learning opportunities in a distant past, in nameless places, where we say that our strategy and our purpose is interwoven. But perhaps the question is how interwoven is it really, to give people that sense of courage and conviction to get on and make change happen. And then finally, we wanted to share our learnings, because to Roz's point, gosh, we have learnt so much in such a short time frame. And I think every time we pause and reflect on just even one session with our leaders or one cohort conversation, there's always something else. And here's one big one for me: invest early in the leadership squad. So I'm talking about my peers. And at the time when we first started, I would have said that I did invest early in the leadership squad. On reflection, I probably wouldn't call it investment or necessarily engaging. I'd probably more call it that I told them what we were doing and then asked them if they liked it. So I think it's really about identifying what investment really means and really embedding and embodying through how the program unfolds the role of the leadership squad in championing this investment in our leaders.
And one of the first fail fast experiences was the 90-day experiment, which Heather mentioned just before. We found that building these communities is actually pretty tricky, and we have to find a balance between providing enough structure to get some momentum going, but not too much so that it becomes sort of a compliance exercise. So we're resetting that, and we kick off next week on a new campaign, on a new approach. And I'm pretty excited to see what's going to emerge in 12 months' time, because I think what will occur is something quite magical. And that brings me now to the +10. This is our +10%. We seek this every time intentionally. So we use our participants and tap into their experience of learning to figure out what we can change or shift so that for the next cohort they have a more impactful experience. And we use our collaborators in that way as well, our academic faculty and people in Heather's team.
And that +10 really links nicely to, it says good things, but I'd say really magical things emerge from disruption. COVID in it itself has really helped us to put on steroids, this whole going after the +10 all the way. And what it's shown us is the design of the plan that we had for this program was really just having a plan so we could change the plan. And so COVID has allowed us to really get very comfortable with that discomfort from the disruption, turn what we were doing from some face-to-face learning into bite-sized micro-learning chunks, really tap into what our leaders' adaptive challenges through that disruption were, and then change, in some cases, the whole syllabus and the whole faculty's approach to what we were actually going after to help our leaders with. And lastly, I think this is something very near and dear to my heart. There's two kind of belief systems, I guess, or two ends of the spectrum. We can choose to have a fully fledged learning and development department embedded within our organisations, or the very other end of that spectrum is to simply, some people would call it outsourcing. I call it building an ecosystem of incredibly credible partners. And I know with great conviction that what we've set out to achieve here and what we already are would not have been possible with, like Roz spoke about, some of those people who are outliers, who are leaders in their own field, but just offer so much expansive thinking that's not about Spark. We don't believe our own, whatever you want to call that phrase, and that we are constantly challenging and stretching ourselves, and that's what keeps it so dynamic and fluid.
Oh, that was fantastic, Heather and Roz. Thanks so much. I think so many of the questions that have streamed in have been about how you managed to sort of adapt and keep the excitement and engagement going when people were under so much pressure, and also around how agile ways of working impacted on the program design. And I think you've gone a long way to explain that, but any tips around getting people on board when they're facing so much pressure?
Yeah, I think I was just having a conversation with another external partner, not in development space, about this morning, around how important it is for us to show up in our more unfinished states during this time. So if I think about when we went into this and we were talking with all of our leaders about the disruption, it was really about framing up, hey, we're in it too, and sharing these very humanistic stories about struggles and challenges, and not making it about, but other people's challenges are bigger and, better than ours, but making it, normalizing the fact that we're all feeling some kind of pressure, whether that's at home or at work or around us. If we are absolutely invested in building communities of practice, then that is going to help us through. And actually, we were quite unapologetic. We kicked off, we didn't do it right in the moment of Alert 4, but the week after we came out of Alert 4, we unapologetically asked our people if they'd like to come along. So we made it entirely voluntary for the cohorts to regroup. And they all did, bar 3 people, I think, who had something. So we also learnt that from the disruption that herding cats into classrooms is, a fun pastime for some people, but we're beyond that because we're looking for people that really want to have those authentic, vulnerable moments with each other. And so we actually then used COVID to determine that this was now going to be fully voluntary. So if you want in, you're absolutely in. If you want out, that's totally fine. There's a whole lot of other learners ready in the pipeline behind.
I think that just speaks volumes for that empathy and that village approach to this that you've taken. So we're almost out of time, but it might be quite nice just to end with one key thought around what personally you took away from this way of working. And I think Ros and Heather, you wanted to sort of pitch that back to the audience as a question to reflect on as well.
Yeah, thanks, Justine. We will finish on that now. I'll let you go first, Ros.
Okay, thanks, Heather. So my question has come from personal experience and something that really over the last 3 years, the whole idea of radically collaborating with whole lots of different people has made a huge difference to me, both professionally and personally. So here's my question coming your way. How are you hunting out opportunities for radical collaboration to create the conditions for yourself and others to thrive? I'll be really interested in your feedback on that one.
And mine, in a true kind of partnership sense, a little bit different, but they really bookend each other, is what I've learned a lot about creative confidence through having to lead this. I stood this program up with Ros and everybody else that's contributed within a couple of months of being appointed to the HR director role. So it was a bit of a nervous time because your first instinct is, jeepers, you don't want to get this wrong as your swan song or your entry point. So my question is, how willing are you to show your unfinished work? And by that I mean, if you really want to make things happen that haven't happened before in ways that you're not sure exactly how, then you can't just play to your strengths anymore. You've got to step out and take some risks and really push the boundaries. And through that, what is demonstrated now is you do get organisational system change.